Audrey Thompson was one of thousands of women who answered the call to serve the home front during World War II. Serving in the Women's Land Army, at first glance, her story is like that of so many others. Established in 1917, the Women's Land Army was dissolved after the First World War. With the nation on its knees again, and most men in service during the Second World War, over 200,000 untrained women stepped in to replace male farm workers. To sign up, women had to be at least 17 years old, unmarried with no children, and considered physically fit. Rising to the challenge, the land girls operated tractors, cultivated crops to keep the nation fed, and surpassed gender stereotypes at every turn. But the extra details on Audrey's service card give away just a couple of secrets. Let's take a close look at this military record. First, we'll access the record and its original image on findmypast.co.uk. Audrey was 17 years old when she signed up in 1942, living at the Lodge in Norland, Yorkshire. She took this step before civil service became compulsory for women, giving us a hint of Audrey's personality and her willingness to serve her country. She entered service as soon as she possibly could. We know she served in West Yorks and then transferred to Suffolk, and we know she married during her tenure. Let's start our exploration of her life by creating a place to record what we learn. We can do that easily on the Find My Past family tree. We'll first need to navigate to Family Tree in the menu bar and then click Create a Tree. Follow the steps, and if you're doing this for your own family, enter as much information as you can, even if it's a guess. In our case, we only know about Audrey right now, so we'll fill in her details and then select Start Your Tree. It's a good idea to give the system as much information as you know or what you don't know. So in our case, we're going to update her living status to unknown, and then click to update her profile. Because we already have several details for Audrey's life from her Land Army card, we want to keep this process as simple as possible for us. The less manual work we have to do, the better. So let's start by merging the facts from her military record to her tree. From the transcription page, simply click on Add to Tree. Select the person in your tree the record talks about, in this case, Audrey, and then click on Continue. You can choose to include all of the facts from the record or just some of them. When you're happy with the facts chosen, simply click on Accept. All of the information from Audrey's Land Army card is now in her profile on her family tree, saved for us. Now that everything is all together, what do we do to move forward? How do we find the rest of Audrey's story? Well, we don't yet know any other member of her family, but we do know that she married thanks to her Land Army service card. So let's start with that event and identify her new husband. We can utilize the England and Wales marriages from 1837 to 2005 collection to find him. We know she became Mrs. Fisher in 1945, so we're going to start by searching for Audrey Thompson with her maiden name, marrying someone with the Fisher surname in that same year. And we find a match straight away. Audrey marries Frank R. Fisher in Yorkshire. And just like that, one simple step, and we have the name of her husband. We can now add him to our family tree in addition to Audrey as well, the exact same way that we did with her military information. And there it is. Well, we have our married couple together. You can see there are hints already starting to pop up, but for now, let's stick with the facts we have from her Land Army service card. You can go back and delve deeper into those hints at any time. It's very common for births, marriages, and deaths to be listed in local papers, and the Fishers would be anticipated to be there. Newspapers are bursting with detail, bringing our ancestors' stories to life with vivid insight and remarkable depth. So we definitely want to see what they can offer about Audrey and Frank. Let's see if our suspicion is correct. And in fact, it is. The marriage is listed. The Halifax Evening Courier includes this small snippet. It's short, but it's important. It has a number of details that will help us. Frank is named as the son of D. Fisher of Woolpit, and Audrey the adopted daughter of Mr. and Mrs. W. Riley of the Lodge in Norland, the exact location on her Land Army card, and that she's adopted. Newspapers actually tell us a lot about Audrey, so let's take a deeper dive while we're here and see what else we can find. Historical newspapers give us so much depth into a story, but there's also a lot of material available to us today, really at our fingertips. We'll need to give the search tool enough information to find the right Audrey Thompson in the right place and time. If we simply search on her name and then the phrase land army, and in the time frame of the Second World War, limiting our search to the decade of the 1940s, we actually find her straight away. In fact, we find her several times. Let's look at this first one from the Halifax Evening Courier, dated 28 September 1945. The headline really stands out, champion rat catcher, and a photo as well. This is a fantastic discovery. And if you take a moment to review the other articles from our search, even pause this video to do so, you'll find more details about Audrey. The adoption piece is repeated several times. Her abilities as a rat catcher are highlighted, along with her Land Army partner, Phoebe Ellis. These two women were nationally known for their war efforts on the home front. Referred to as modern Pied Pipers, we don't just get the basic details. We can also learn exactly how the members of the Land Army went through this process and why it was so vital to keep the crops in good health. It's one thing to learn that Audrey herself was so successful, but it's also important to learn the how, when, where, and why of that success, really understanding this day-to-day experience of these land girls. Not to mention the sense of pride for this work for Audrey and her peers. It must have been an incredible moment to be featured nationally as a war hero for something considered so outside of a typical woman's behavior, to get such a sense of fulfillment from this vital but rarely talked about job. And of course, we easily see that the Land Army was just one of the women's national services during the war, which also included the Auxiliary Territorial Force, the Women's Royal Naval Service, and the Women's Auxiliary Force, just to name a few. So now we have all these newspaper clippings. What do we do with them? Let's save them to Audrey's family tree. When you are looking at a newspaper article on Findmypast, you can use the built-in clipping tool for several functions. Just select your area like this, and once that's settled and you're happy with the cropping, you can save to your tree, download the article, share it with your friends and family on social media, or save it to a collection. In our case, we want to add it to her tree, so we have a visual timeline of her life. Simply click here, and it's done, just like that. You can see that you still have more options, such as adding to a collection. I actually recommend that you go through all of these steps. Collections allow you to save and organize your favorite Findmypast newspaper clippings. You can create collections about any topic and add clippings to one or multiple collection. It's a really excellent tool to visualize and complement your own storytelling. For now, we want to go back to the tree where we can easily see all the articles on Audrey's profile, and it really allows her to come to life. Everything we have found so far is right here, not just as a simple sentence or fact, but we see the full newspaper clipping as we captured it. It allows Audrey's life and her experiences to be showcased. Let's take one more step to learn about Audrey and her war experience, starting at the very beginning of this conflict. Let's take a look at both Audrey and Frank as young, single adults in the 1939 Register. As the only snapshot of the civilian population for the time period, the 1939 Register allows us to see Audrey and Frank on the eve of the biggest and deadliest war in human history. We can discover what their family life was like, their occupation, and the neighbors they would take shelter alongside. What must they have been feeling during this life-altering period of their lives? As the government called for recruits both for the military and civil roles, and the fear of a World War I-style gas attack on British shores started to feel very real, families all over the country scrambled to acquire garden bomb shelters, relocated their children out of the cities, and many pre-planned for food rationing and limited resources. 1939 was a year of change and fear. This imminent war shaped the trajectory of their lives over the next 6 years, whether they knew it or not. It didn't take long for Audrey and her family to feel the impact. Nearby Halifax was bombed in 1940, killing 11 people in Hanson Lane. Audrey was living at home when this happened and was just 16 years old. And did either of them ever think that they would find a spouse during this intense global conflict? We'll start by exploring the 1939 Register with Frank. We can estimate that he was born around the same time as Audrey, at least as a starting point, and we know he's the son of Mrs. D. Fisher of Woolpit in Suffolk, so we know approximately where we're looking and who we're looking for. With just his name and the location, we actually get 4 results back to our search. The first one is actually in Woolpit. The others are quite nearby. There are 2 that have a similar birth year of Audrey in 1924, the first and the last, so we don't want to count out any of these. But we'll go with the first result for Frank Roland Fisher because of the location and the other matching details. And it turns out this is the correct entry. We find Frank living with his mother, the widowed Daisy Fisher, on Borley Green in Woolpit. His birth date is 11th of February 1923, and he works as an agricultural laborer. So let's do this again, but this time for Audrey. Audrey Thompson living in Norland, York, and we know she was born in 1924. The search process in the 1939 register gives us 5 results back. The first one looks really promising, with both Thompson and Fisher listed as her names. But why does it also say Waters? Let's take a look at the original historical record to see what's happening. And here we find her living with her adoptive parents, the Rileys. So we can see right away this is the correct entry. And the 1939 register was used for many years after the fact. So all of her marriages and their name changes are recorded. 1939 register is an essential record set for women. But this is just the start of Audrey's story. It has allowed us to see how a simple military record, her Women's Land Army service card, can lead us to so much more. And the 1939 register hints at that as well. More. She was actually married twice, and that's why she has the surname Waters in the register as well. The newspaper articles also talk repeatedly about her adoption. So while we don't have time today to delve into her entire story, it is enticing to see this additional information about her. These are the tidbits all of us are hoping for in family history, giving us clues to continue our efforts. Perhaps you can take a turn in finding more of Audrey's story. We would love to hear what you find out. We started this today by saying that Audrey Thompson was one of thousands of women who answered the call to serve the home front during World War II. And she absolutely was. Not only that, but she excelled in her work, even making headlines for her remarkable commitment to duty. All the while, she balanced life as both a dedicated rat catcher in the Women's Land Army and a wartime newlywed. Audrey's story is a powerful reminder of the extraordinary women who shaped history. Perhaps it's time to uncover the wartime heroines in your family past. These are the stories that make the UK what it is today. This is an exploration of a life. This is Family History Understood.